Chapter 495, Distribution. O merciful Father, I implore your mercy for the transgressions I've made. In apartment 601, 3 Rue des Blouses Blanches. Lumion, Franca, Jenna, and Anthony fell silent as they stared at the gleaming full-body silver armor before them. Before delving into the details, they had already sensed the power emanating from the sealed artifact. The brief yet potent hurricane of light it unleashed was a deadly force. Even Gardner Martin, a Sequence 5 Reaper, was willing to trade other mystical items for its might. However, upon scrutinizing the information provided, their initial enthusiasm waned, and they instinctively distanced themselves from the armor named Pride. Within the sealed artifact information was a stark warning in red ink. The curse of betrayal originates from a deity's intense aversion and hatred before their demise. Even angels can't fully escape its grasp, only mitigating the negative effects to a certain extent. The sole solution is to shatter the armor and restore it to a pure Beyonder characteristic. However, this means losing its uniqueness. For instance, the ability to use Hurricane of Light again in just 2 minutes without delay. Moreover, those Beyonders who advance by consuming a potion derived from that Beyonder characteristic will endure reasonable but not too severe betrayal for an extended period. Recalling Gardner Martin's tragic end, Franca, initially skeptical, now felt an unexplained fear. The betrayal curse seemed more formidable than she had imagined. Lumion observed the hesitancy in Franca, Anthony, and Jenna, realizing none were eager to claim the particular spoils of war. With a smile, he declared, "I'll go first." Pointing at Gardner Martin's remains on the coffee table, he stated, "I choose Reaper." The Beyonder characteristic had fused into a finger, creating an unusually sharp, bone blade emitting an icy glint. The holder needed to be cautious to avoid accidental injury. Immediately afterward, Lumion shifted his gaze to the charred bone flute originating from General Philip. "I'll trade the hypnotist Beyonder characteristics and the decency brooch for this. You guys wouldn't be able to handle it anyway." Per Madam Magician's intel, while the bone flute held significant power and uniqueness, it carried the risk of bringing misfortune in the form of injuries, death, and other grisly calamities. Only Lumion possessed the resilience to withstand these negative effects and mitigate them without succumbing to excessive misfortune. In truth, if General Philip's grudges before his demise hadn't been so potent, and if the curse of misfortune stemming from the deceased pathway's boon hadn't been so exaggerated, Lumion might have struggled more to endure it. After all, enduring perpetual misfortune wasn't anyone's wish. Even if it wasn't lethal, it would still lead to considerable trouble. Experiencing excessive bad luck was akin to tempting the fate intertwined with Termaboros, a fate deeply connected to Lumion. The potency of the bone flute wasn't sufficient to affect an angel. As per Madam Magician's detailed description, Lumion, naming the bone flute the Symphony of Hatred, discovered it possessed 3 abilities. With a simple blow, it emits a sharp, ear-piercing sound. This not only damages the spirit body, inducing dizziness, nausea, and convulsions in the target, but it can also directly impact Beyonders with weaker physiques, those equivalent to ordinary adults. They might suffer temporary blindness, paralysis, or internal organ damage. It appears that a symphony resonating from the depths of the River of Fate inflicts a weakness on the enemy's mind. Those with unstable minds may experience symptoms akin to madness. Those with psychological issues might have latent problems triggered. There's even a chance that excessive desires could cause them to explode on the spot. Individuals with illnesses or old injuries will inevitably face severe consequences. Those less fortunate may find themselves extremely unlucky. Of course, the player needs some knowledge about musical instruments to play the bone flute effectively. Otherwise, they'll only create noise, similar to the effect of a simple blow. While this bone flute is brittle and can't be used for blocking, wherever it stabs is equivalent to hitting a vital point. If it strikes a true vital point, the enemy will either be killed in a single blow or face the fate of social death for an extended period. Franca observed as Lumion placed the colorless colloid with numerous bubbles and the decency brooch, crafted into a Scotch broom, on the coffee table. She nodded imperceptibly. That seems like a fair trade. Observing the lack of objections from Anthony and Jenna, Lumion produced a deep black cloth bag resembling a coin pouch. He carefully placed the Reaper Beyonder characteristic and the Symphony of Hatred bone flute inside. This was one of Madame Magician's true rewards for him, Traveler's Bag. Crafted personally by Magician, it was a Beyonder item devoid of characteristics. At first glance, it seemed to hold only up to 200 coins, but it concealed another dimension within, equivalent to the entire apartment 601. It could accommodate a vast array of items, including the Pride armor. Magician had also placed a specific seal inside the item. While within the bag, Beyonder characteristics didn't require regular relocation, and the negative effects of mystical items would significantly diminish. The Traveler's Bag needed resealing and reinforcement every 6 months. Otherwise, it would lose its mystical abilities and become ordinary. In such circumstances, if the items inside weren't retrieved promptly, they would be lost to the spirit world and nearly impossible to recover. Similarly, Franca received a Traveler's Bag as her reward. After claiming his share, Lumion turned his attention to Anthony Reed, indicating for the psychiatrist to make his selection. Anthony smiled wryly. "I contributed the least. I'll take this hypnotist main ingredient. I feel that my psychological problems have been alleviated. I can contemplate advancing." In his interactions with Lumion, Franca, and the others, he often heard words and sentences infused with mystic knowledge. Though he refrained from direct inquiries, over time, he vaguely grasped various patterns and the essence of things he wouldn't have considered before. It was as if a new world had unfolded before him. "No problem," Franca replied, not insisting on Anthony choosing another item. She turned to Jenna and said, "I want the mirror fragment left behind by the fake Martin." Madame Magician referred to this item as the Mirror World Fragment. It served as a crucial clue for Franca's subsequent investigation into the state of the primordial demoness, and it possessed a unique quality. Using it to reflect a target allowed the user to create a corresponding mirror person. However, they couldn't replicate entities with godhood, and the mirroring effect could only be maintained for a maximum of 5 minutes. The fragment produced 2 types of mirror people. The first was a shallow mirror image, replicable in 10 seconds. The second was a deep conversion that took a minute to complete. The former retained the original body's state, as long as the body hadn't undergone a gender change, similar to those Franca and Lumion had encountered before. However, these mirror people were relatively weak, equivalent to the original body at a certain past stage, and lacked abilities like mirror substitution. The latter was a nearly perfect replica, akin to the ones recently encountered, possessing special traits. Of course, for a demoness of pleasure, this wasn't practical. If she could already capture the other party's figure with a mirror, why not directly cast a curse instead of creating a mirror person? Lumion interjected, "You can take another one, Franca. No need to be modest. Your contributions in these battles are second only to mine." "What do you mean second only to you?" Franca scoffed, pushing the decency brooch in her direction. The only remaining spoils of war were the small, dark-painted wooden box, each side adorned with a membrane curtain and the Pride armor. Jenna swiftly made her choice and selected the authority holder's under-the-table transaction. According to Lumion, her lucky gold coin no longer carried any additional luck. Its usefulness was now limited to specific situations. Recognizing this, she didn't believe she could resist the betrayal curse of the Pride armor. Jenna understood the importance of not being overly prideful and blindly relying on luck, taking Gardner Martin's fate as a sobering lesson. The usage of authority holders under-the-table transaction involved grasping valuable items with one's hand, inserting them into the dark wooden box through the side curtain, handing it to the outstretched palm-like object, and stating one's requirements. This process simplified complex matters and eased difficult transactions. However, one needed to have a clear, achievable target. No vague requests were allowed. For example, directly stating a desire for a specific Beyonder characteristic or mystical item was useless. Users had to find the corresponding Beyonder characteristic or mystical item, fail to reach a deal, and then make their request. This approach involved changing the seller's mind, with a high chance of securing a steep discount. The under-the-table transaction had various applications, even allowing two individuals with deep grudges to reconcile by shaking hands inside the box, though the individual shaking hands wasn't actually the other party. Authority holders' under-the-table transaction was an active remnant of boon powers, and without beyonder characteristics, it could only be used 9 more times. The downside was that each use increased the likelihood of encountering evil creatures like demons in future transactions. As Jenna stowed away the authority holder's under-the-table transaction, Franca smiled and said, "I wish to use the decency brooch to exchange for the black primordial demoness figurine, or would you prefer to zero your debt as an exchange?" Following Madame Judgment's suggestion, Franca intended to use this unique figurine to gauge the demoness sex reaction and potentially exchange it for their rewards. "This is everyone's spoils of war," Jenna responded in confusion. Franca grinned and explained, "No, it's yours. Back then, only you with the lucky gold coin could hold it, so it's rightfully yours. To put it simply, this is a gain from luck." Jenna glanced at Lumion and Anthony, finding their nods of agreement. She muttered, "Damn it, you're making me feel embarrassed. I want the decency brooch. Only by personally paying off a debt does it become meaningful." As she spoke, Jenna handed the black primordial demoness figurine to Franca and stowed away the decency brooch, carved into a Scotch broom. Finally, the group directed their attention to the silver-white pride armor, and a contemplative silence ensued once again. After a lengthy pause, Franca exclaimed, "Seal, keep it. Treat it as a communal item that anyone can use. Only the both of us can carry it conveniently now. Besides, you're about to head to Port Santa in Fainapotter's Gaia province. You can't borrow my mirror substitution anymore. This armor will be very useful in critical moments." Lumion had already made the decision to investigate the Sea Prayer ritual in Port Santa, Fainapotter Kingdom's Gaia province, and search for traces of the April Fool's Key members, Bard and Ultraman.